Good evening, my name's Ian Gilder, host of the cruise Channel.TV. I've actually got my chair back this week. Young Mr. Captain Calvi is sailing around Australia and Dubai, I do believe. Is that correct, John?
He's on there. I saw him today on Facebook. He's at the Great Barrier Reef today.
Great Barrier Reef. Sorry, been very rude. This is Mr. John Fair, known as Shallow John.
Good evening.
Due to knows everything about river cruises.
Yes.
And sort of short water or
shallow drafts. Shallow drafts.
Shallow drafts. And today is a very special show today.
Yep.
Because we are having a show on river cruises and coastal cruises.
Correct.
This is your speciality and this is your passion, if I'm correct.
It is my passion. I like to think I know a little bit about other cruises, but this is what I've done for the last few years, and so hopefully I can bring some insight to the show.
Well, it's actually great news. I've just actually come back off my second ever river cruise. The first one I went on was about 8-9 years ago, and it was on a ship that no longer goes. It was very good value. It was very, very cheap. It was a 3-star ship. And I've just had the pleasure of coming back from a stunning voyage down the Danube with scenic cruises.
Very nice.
And it was very, very nice. But I think what's great here at the moment, myself and John, we've actually just launched a new website last week, Adore River Cruises. So I think it's a great thing we can actually talk about river. And why is river so big and so popular? And what's the difference between river and ocean cruises, John?
Well, I think, as you know, river cruising is growing exponentially fast and faster in percentage terms than ocean cruising, and it's I think a lot of people migrate eventually from ocean to river. It's clearly a completely different concept. Not only is it on a river, but the ship's a lot smaller. They tend to be 3 or 4 decks, hold anywhere between 90 to 180 people as a rule, and obviously are very focused on the destination. One of the great things about river cruising is literally, in most cases, the ships sail straight into the centre of town, dock up in the middle of town, you get off and you're in the middle of the town. Whereas often with ocean cruising, as you well know, the harbours are, some considerable distance out.
Something like Lamchabangi's 2 hours away,
yes.
Civitavecchia for Rome.
Yes. And I think it's very much, whilst obviously clearly ocean cruising is about culture as well, river cruising is very focused on culture. And you'll get things like wine tasting cruises and classical music cruises. But it's all about seeing and immersing yourself into the culture of the area that you're looking at. So, and we've got some offers later on the Rhine and the Danube, but the rivers of the world are opening up now. So you can anywhere from the Mekong and the Irrawaddy to the Columbus and Snake River in America, the Mississippi, the Amazon, and then in Europe, the list is endless. I mean, there is a lot of rivers to travel on. So if you enjoy that sort of thing, you don't have to do the Rhine every like some people do the Med every year. Don't have to do the Rhine. You can move around Europe and enjoy it. And there are a lot of very reputable, very good companies now doing river cruise.
The cruise lines we generally use, why have you chosen these? Is it because their service is so good or value for money? Why are the cruise lines that we generally use, are we actually using them for? I think
a mixture of everything you've said there. River cruising, as you indicated, there's everything from some of the really old ships, something like the Lady Anne, which Shirin uses. She's over 100 years old.
Really?
But people love to go on her because she's a slice of history. But she's a very old ship. And the price for that compared to some of the ships like Scenic you've just been on, when you're talking a fairly large figure to go on them, there's a whole range. So what we try and do is, whilst we will feature both ends, we try and look at the middle ground, if you like, the ships that offer what I think is good value for money. Some of the ships are now all-inclusive, which changes the scenario. Some include excursions, some don't. But it's offering that range. So if you want to spend a lot of money, you can. If you want to go on maybe on a coach down from Dover, you can. But this is what we're going to talk about today, is the middle ground.
So the packages we together are middle ground.
Correct.
Because Scenic, who I've just come off, are at the top end, aren't they?
They are at the top end.
And to be fair, they were absolutely amazing, good quality of food. But it is back to the immersing yourself. They had lots of cultural experiences. Like one of the nights, they took us into Vienna, went to this private palace, and there was an opera and dancing and singing exclusively for Scenic guests.
Yeah.
Another one of the nights, they took us to a bar. They had Austrian Oompa Loompa and Lederhosen, just exclusively for their guests. And as I say, it's getting really into the culture of the countries that you're actually visiting. It's all inclusive, all your food, all your drink, all your excursions, your gratuities are included as well. So when we actually go through the offers, I think we need to remind people what's actually included in these holidays.
Yes.
Because sometimes you might go, different cruise lines are actually cheaper, but when it doesn't include your tips, your drinks, your excursions, that's the reason why it is actually cheaper.
Yes. And I think for many people, whilst it again, like ocean cruising, it's coming down, river cruising is a slightly older market. It tends to be 60 plus for people who go regularly. And for many there, you know, all-inclusive drinks aren't as important as the excursions, because that's what they want to do. So,
from my experience, I've been selling ocean cruises for many years now, and sometimes we get 7 nights as cheap as $399. I know river cruises are considerably more than that.
Yes.
Why is there generally a price difference between a river cruise and an ocean cruise? Because some people are going to go, this is expensive, or can be expensive, but they're still great value. But why is it actually slightly more expensive than?
yeah, I think number one is supply and demand. There is not as many ships, although they're building ships at a rapid rate of knots, which may see some effect on price in time. But also, it's obviously you're talking about, as I said, maximum 180 on a ship. So the cost per person to run that ship is clearly going to be higher than something that's got 3,500 people on it, when they can bring the overall cost down.
Scale of economy.
Scale of accommodation and stuff like that. Plus, also, as I said, a lot of it, the docking fees are high because you are in the centre of town. The excursions tend to be high because there's less people. So the whole economics of river cruising is a whole different world than to some of the huge ships that sail the oceans.
Yeah, I was on there and I loved it. One thing I have noticed, there isn't as much to see and do whilst you're on the ship. They're not like the floating resorts like the Norwegians and the Carnivals of the world. This is good fashion. You're going to get some great food. You're not going to have 15 choices like you have on an ocean cruise as well, because I don't have the size of the galleys to actually do so. But the food is top notch. The one thing I absolutely loved about the cruise I've just come off was the service.
Yeah.
I'm going to get a big shout out to the people who served me. Eddie in the bar, he knew exactly what I was drinking all the time. Martina, she was great, and so was Rosie. Literally, I felt like I was on must be something like a 6-star cruise ship. They know what you're thinking before you're thinking it. They're already topping your glass over. They come up and have some fun with you. They want to give you a kiss and cuddle and just be nice to you. And it was absolutely fantastic. The staff on there was arguably the best that I've actually been away with, and I think it's worth paying a small premium for that as well.
Yeah, and I think that's something about river cruising, and certainly the likes of, you've seen it, you've been on Tauk, Avalon, the top end, they promise us on not only the hardware, the physical ship is brand new, and the cabins are obviously a lot bigger, but then the service. But my experience is, no matter what ship you go on, the service tends to be very good on river cruise, because you are talking a smaller number of people, you are in a more intimate setting, you are talking 3 meals a day, normally at a seated table as opposed to a buffet. Sometimes breakfast is buffet, but generally you're getting the service right the way through, and then of course you get to know your cabin staff, and in many cases you get to know the crew who pilot the ship.
Yeah, I met the captain 2-3 times. I was actually out on the front sort of at midnight and having a drink with him, which was really quite nice.
Yeah.
And I loved it, especially cruising through the rivers at night. I've got some great pictures of Budapest where they've got the lights on the palaces. I think it's a very, very good product, and I think I like active stuff, and it may be a little bit too young for it at the moment, but I think when I get older, I do think it does sit very well with a lot of people, especially if you like history, culture, classical music. If you like them type of things, it's going to be right up your street.
Yeah, and I think one thing to bear in mind is obviously if you're at the times when the ship is sailing at daytime, 2 things. One is the sailing through the locks. It's a fascinating thing to see, because they squeeze these ships into these tiny locks, literally with inches either side.
Some of them are around about 80 to 100 foot deep.
Yeah,
they're big locks.
Phenomenal. But also, the scenery is not the same. I mean, ocean cruising is great for relaxing, but the sea is the sea when you're out at sea.
Yes.
Whereas when you're sailing down the Rhine or down the Danube or another river, literally the scenery is changing as you go. So a lot of people just like to watch the scenery. But if not, it's great for literally reading a Kindle, reading a book, and just relaxing as you float, especially if it's good weather. Obviously not guaranteed in Europe. On the rivers, sometimes a little chilly, but it's good.
Then you've got Christmas market cruises where you wrap up, and if you're going and visiting castles and vineyards and palaces, you don't want to be 80, 90 degrees. No. You actually want it slightly cooler. And
well, one will come on to this. One thing with river cruising, again, high season is actually May, June and September. It's not July and August. Because for exactly the reason you said, slightly older people, they don't want baking hot weather of 80, 90 degrees. So the cruise lines tend to have better prices in July and August, which is sort of diametrically opposed to the cruise lines, to the ocean cruise lines.
Right.
And that's high season. Because it's not really a family thing. You don't get many children. Disney are now doing river cruising. They're trying to attract families. They've got a couple of ships. But generally, it's not a family market. So you get a completely different perspective in that case.
My appetite is whetted. I think we should actually have a look at a video. Should we look at Select Voyages? They're our first offer, aren't they?
They are our first 2 offers, actually.
First 2 offers.
Yes.
So let's have a look at the video on Select Voyages and find out a little bit more what river cruising is about.